What is going on, pro wrestling fans and gamers? Once again, it is your host, Arachnid Soul, joined by Fight Night's finest, the Sofic commentator, Fight Night, your boy, Slick Rick, the limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun, the nature boy Ric Flair out of Charlotte, North Carolina, making his way down to the ring, joined as always by his best friend slash sometimes cousin, the enforcer Arn Anderson. Fight Night, what is going on?
What is going on, Arachnid Soul, and what is good, gamers? It's your boy, Fight Night's finest, the Sofic commentator, doing a little topical commentary over this video with who else besides, that guy.
Now, if you guys and girls out there do not know who Nature Boy Ric Flair is, you've been living under a rock. And I know most of you are American, but if you don't know who this man making his way down the aisle is, the great Muta, a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, a legend just about in every major Japanese organization that's existed over the past 20 to 25 years, now the founder of the Wrestle One promotion. And Fight Night, I've been telling you that some of these American games, you know those wrestling games I'm talking about, are complete and utter garbage. There you see Muta with that miss. You actually got to sit down last night for the first time ever with this game, and you sat there and you played it for 3 hours. I kind of coached you, and maybe we'll make one of those sessions later for the people to see. Anyway, tell me a little bit about your time playing this game so far.
Well, the last wrestling game that I played before this one was SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, and after playing that wrestling game, I never wanted to play a wrestling game again. I don't trust any of the WWE games that come out. I know 2K15 just dropped, and a lot of people are excited about that, but after sitting back and playing this game last night, I really felt like I've never played such a good wrestling game where the mechanics were on point, the gameplay was flawless, and I really felt like I could perform a bunch of different combinations of moves and really execute my strategy to perfection while playing this game. And then going back and looking at some, WWE 2K15 footage, I only thought to myself, why couldn't they make a game based off this engine and just maybe improve the animations and improve the graphics that you see on this game and maybe put the ones from 2K15 in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I always tell people. I've played so many great wrestling games, and they're not the games from that company in New York. People need to know. This is an older game. This is King of Colosseum 2. This is arguably the best professional wrestling game ever made. Every professional wrestler and MMA fighter you can think of is on this game. They've got every professional wrestling organization. When you talk about MMA, they've got rings, they've got Pancrase, they've got UFC, they've got K1, they've got Pride FC, guys that you would see later on compete in Dream MMA. They've got everyone on this game. The logic of the created wrestlers, the logic of the in-game wrestlers is so on point. Guys do things in the same order that they actually do them in real life. They've got the same psychology. And maybe you don't know Muta, or maybe you don't know Ric Flair, but as you watch this match in the background, you notice, yeah, this is exactly how these guys wrestle. You know, the chain wrestling mechanics, and also this game's so rewarding when you can actually execute moves that you want to execute. There's a learning curve, but it's enjoyable, and this is the reason why a lot of the American games that come out I completely ignore, and people say, well, why aren't you playing that SmackDown versus Raw game on your site? It's because those games are horrible. I'm not wasting my money on them. They're crappy games. They're frustrating. And by the way, with Muta, I'm trying to hit that corkscrew elbow that I can't hit. But, yeah, I mean, Fight Night spent 3 hours last night just playing as Jushin Thunder Liger, trying to get those mechanics down. And explain to us a little bit the difference between the first match you had on this game and then 3 hours later after you put some time into it.
So at first the game was a little bit complicated to learn, trying to figure out when was the proper time to go for a finishing maneuver, figuring out when was the proper time to go maybe for a grapple, when was it better to strike, and when was it better, when I needed to breathe and rest and take, a stamina break and maybe throw my guy out the ring or step out the ring myself and get a breather. So being in, just trying to figure out what was the proper positions to put the player in so that I can execute like submissions, or I can execute like high risk maneuvers going off the top rope. It was such a big difference from when I first started and what I was used to, you know, basically coming towards 3 hours when I was starting to get the hang of stuff. And even though I'm not the best player right now, I have a better understanding of the game because I practice with it.
Right. Let me do some of that professional commentary for just a second. It was a couple of seconds ago. You saw the great Muta, the legend out of Japan. He executed that space rolling elbow, followed that up with the face crusher. There we see that rear naked choke as the enforcer Arn Anderson looks on from ringside. Back heel sweep that time. Nature Boy Ric Flair trapped the leg, and there was a rope break. You are watching. Wait a minute. Shades of the now retired Jerry Lynn. Cradle pile driver, lateral press at center ring, and a 2 count only gets the great Muta. People, pay no attention to the fact that yes, we have a Pro Wrestling Noah referee. They are wrestling in a New Japan Pro Wrestling ring, yet the curtain says All Japan Pro Wrestling. Call it Fight Night.
That Frankenstein off the top turnbuckle.
That top turnbuckle Frankensteiner. You know the Fight Night, and I had to sit down. We watched like a 15 or 20 minute video. It was the best of the Steiner brothers, and half of it was awesome double team moves, but man, that Frankensteiner, and that's why I still call that move a Frankensteiner when I do the throwdown commentary, by the way, and not a Hurricane Rana. And by the way, those are two different moves. The head scissors, the Frankensteiner, the Hurricane Rana, those are not the same thing. If you don't hook the leg at least one, that is not Shades of Hurricane Ramirez. That is not a Hurricane Rana. So later on, look at that beautiful suplex. Later on, you are going to see me kind of coaching Fight Night's Finest on this game. The fact that, look at that, over the top that time, not a victory roll to Juji Gatami. The fact that in this game, you really have to start out with the weak moves because the stronger moves will get countered. Oh, look at that. Ric Flair with your favorite move there, Fight Night.
That figure four leg lock, man.
Yeah. Flair going old school. Like I said, they've got the real logic in this game. Flair saw the opening. He was at center ring, went for that figure four leg lock. A lot of the time when you go against Ric Flair, especially on the harder settings, you notice that he will strut, he will do the little woo, he will chop the hell out of you, he will go for the shin breakers, he will work the knee much like that, and eventually he will get you in the center of the ring and make you either verbally submit or tap out with the figure four leg lock.
Uh-oh, it looks like Muta might go flying here.
Yep. Muta, one of the amazing flyers in the NWA and in WCW in the very tail end of the 1980s and early 90s. Muta known at the time for coming off the top rope with the moonsault, and if you think about the fact that in other organizations the finishing maneuver of the world champion at that point was hitting the ropes, jumping up about 3.5 inches and dropping a leg, and then you've got Muta, the NWA World Champion. He's coming off the top rope with the backflip press, the moonsault at the time. A move that I've still seen him do. And here's a trademark. Look at that. That shining elbow, that rushing elbow. Call it what you will. And this right here is something that you wouldn't see with Liger Fight Night. But basically with some moves, you can carry a guy around and kind of drop him where you want to.
Yeah, so even though some people may be looking at this game and just think to themselves like, oh, there goes that bulldog, a running bulldog actually, but you know, some people may look at the game and think like,
Shining Wizard! Oh, 2.9.
The 2.9, I thought it was finished.
That Shining Wizard, anyway, continue that point.
Yeah, well, you know, the action's so fast that sometimes you just gotta stop and appreciate what it is that you're seeing. But I know some people may be looking at this and think like, you know, he's sliding on the ring when he walks and other things. But you gotta remember, this is a PS2 game, but it's not always about how things look. It's more about how it plays and how it feels and how much sim is it to how the actual sport is. And when you sit back and you play the game, you feel like you're in a wrestling ring. You feel like, you know, you're up there watching a wrestling match or a wrestling event, and you're there. So that's the most important thing whenever you guys sit here and look at this footage. It's not always to look at stuff like, oh, this is not how it is now. But think about the fun factor. Don't always, it doesn't have to be a AAA title.
Right. And by the way, this actually, I believe, was a AAA title, much like the Throwdown Wrestling game, which was All-Star Pro Wrestling 3, that game made by Square Enix. But in any case, this game rather, still actually has more moves per wrestler than even the modern SmackDown versus Raw games. This was the final game actually in the Fire Pro Wrestling series. There's probably 25 games in that series. You have Giant Graham. This game is also the spiritual successor of that game, Giant Graham, as we saw Flair that time get countered. And I got a feeling this is going to be it. Let's lay out.
A moonsault off the top rope into the pin. That should be it. That's going to get the job done. The Great Muta picking up the victory over Ric Flair. I got to say, Rack, and that was a beautifully executed moonsault.
Oh, well, you know how we do. Anyway, it has been your host, Arachnid Soul, intellectual, voracious, and passionate about showing you good games, even if they're not AAA games, but this one is. Joined by Fight Night's finest, the Sophic commentator, and the two of us will catch you guys and girls later. Go check that man out, youtube.com/Fight Night's finest. Thank you, and good night. I'm coaching him. We're trying to get him good at this game. He's just started playing this game last night. He is playing as Jushin Thunder Liger, the wrestler in the red and white. His opponent in the blue and black is El Samurai. Fight Night, what's going on?
What's going on, Arachnid? Just trying to make sure I make my trainer proud.
Yeah, so you're starting out good. The Shote Palm Rush that time.